Hey, how's it going, guys? It's your boy Davinci Resolve, and finally today I'll be sharing with you guys in this video how I color grade my videos in Davinci Resolve. I'll be going over nodes, what they are, and how I set up my node tree. I'll be going over LUTs and kind of the LUTs I choose to color grade my videos. I'll be color grading 3 videos, and one of those videos I will be color grading it without LUTs. So 2, I'll color grade using LUTs. The last video, I'll show you guys how I color grade videos without any LUTs from start to finish. I've actually been editing with Davinci Resolve for about 3 years now, and I have picked up a few things that you might find very valuable and useful. And if you're getting any value out of these videos that I'm uploading, definitely like, comment, and subscribe. I'm trying to get my YouTube channel to grow. Hit a little bit of like a stagnant area with my YouTube channel just because I haven't been consistent. But hey, I'm here. I'm trying to be consistent. I'm trying to grow this community. So let's get into it. I have my videos that I'll be color grading loaded up in my media pool right here. And let's see, the first video I'll be color grading is gonna be this video that I took when I was in Utah, if I remember correctly. If you've never been to Monument Valley, this is Monument Valley on the border of Arizona and Utah. Very beautiful location. I would highly recommend you go check it out. Basically, what I'll do is I'll bring this one into the timeline. Let me minimize my timeline a little bit so I can see the entire clip. I'll just cut this part out, repo delete, and then I'll cut that part out. And then the second video that I'll color grade is I took this video when I was in, there's a place out here in Connecticut where I currently reside here called Buckhamstead, and there's a dam over there, it's called Salville Dam, and that's where I took this video right here. So this is the second shot I'll be color grading. So I'll just cut this one right here. And the last video I'll be color grading is gonna be this video I shot. I took this in the North Cascades Mountains in Washington State when I took a trip out there. So those are the 3 videos I'll be color grading today. And this last video is gonna be the video I'll color grade without any LUTs. These 2, I'll choose 2 different LUTs for them. All right, so we're gonna start off with the Arizona video clip in Monument Valley. Usually I try to keep things simple whenever I'm color grading. I try not to complicate the process, you know. Look, I'm not a colorist, so I don't go super crazy when it comes to colors and stuff like that. But just kind of understanding some of these things does help. And these are just kind of like your basic, like your highlights, your shadows, your color boost, saturation, just all the basic things, you know. And sometimes I just play around with like, you know, color boost, shadows, contrast, tint, temperature, and things of that nature. But pretty much that's the layout. What are nodes? For me, nodes are basically like if you've used Photoshop or if you edited in Photoshop, nodes are pretty much just layers. So it's not too complicated. So if you want to create like other nodes, like for me, what I'll do is I'll click Alt and S, and then boom, you can create as many nodes as you want. And then I just do Control Z if I want to kind of like backtrack. Like right now, I'll create like 3 nodes, right? And usually what I normally do is once I have my nodes, I'll label my nodes, right? You can technically edit and do everything on one node, but the problem with doing that is, let's say you've done all your edits and you want to change a few things. Since everything is on one layer, it's going to be impossible to reverse your process, right? Having different layers just allows you the freedom to say, okay, if I want to do my highlights, I can put my highlights on one layer. I can do my shadows on one layer, my color boost on one layer. And then if you don't like how that looks, you can just delete specific layers or shut off or turn off specific layers or nodes, basically. So nodes are just basically layers to keep it as simple as possible. For me, what I normally do is I'll have like a primary layer where I'll do my shadows, highlights, and all the basic color correcting stuff. So I'll just put this first node as my primary. So where, you know, I'll do all my, like my curve is gonna be in there. Then this node is gonna be my CST, right? Just to kind of backtrack here real quick. All this footage that I've shot, I shot it in S-Log, right? When you look at all this footage, it looks very flat. The colors are not saturated. Everything kind of looks a little bit washed. The reason why shooting in log is pretty cool is because you retain a lot of information within that file that you shoot, and then it's easy for you to play around with it and edit it than just a video that's already been converted to Rec 709, which is basically what you see straight out of your camera if you don't shoot it in S-Log, or if you just shoot something straight out of your phone camera. So if anyone is wondering why all these clips are like flat and they look a little bit washed, is because I shot them in S-Log CD3. All right, so I have my CST here, and then and I'll put my LUT on the last node. Right now, when I start off when I'm editing, I got the 3 nodes laid out like that, and then I'll probably bring in other nodes if I want to start tweaking stuff. And so I'm just kind of compartmentalizing my workflow. That way, if I don't like something, I can just delete the node or mute the node. So that's why editing in multiple nodes is good. All right, so right now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to effects, right? And CST is basically where I'm gonna put my color space transform, because I will change a few things with this footage to convert it to something that is gonna be workable with Rec 709. So what I'll do here, I'll put my input, right? So it is gonna be, we're gonna look for S-Log here. S-Log CD3 is what I shot it in. Yeah, S-Log 3, right? And then input gamma S-Log 3. So input color space Sony S gamma 3 Cine. And then so output color space is gonna be Rec 709. Then output gamma is gonna be Cine on film log. All right, there we go. So once I have this set up right here, I have everything set up, my workable workspace here. And I can turn it off and on, and you can see there's a slight difference from where it was before I put this color space transform, very flat, and then when I converted it to Cine on film. The cool thing about Davinci Resolve is Davinci Resolve has free LUTs built into the software. So there are different types of LUTs here, as you can see here, S-Log, Sony LUTs. And for the second video, I'll probably try using one of these Sony LUTs. But for this one right here, we're gonna use the film look right here. So here, basically, I'll scroll all the way down to these Rec 709 Kodak film LUTs right here. And when you hover over it, you can kind of see like a preview of what's gonna happen to your footage when you kind of apply it as a LUT, basically here. So you can see a little bit of a preview. So this LUT right here, Rec 709 Kodak 2383 D65, it looks very more like, I want to say, neutral compared to this one, which looks a little bit warmer. This is Kodak 2383 D60, and this one is D55, which looks a little bit warmer to the eye. But I'll go with this one right here. This one looks like a little bit more neutral, so I'll use this one right here. And as you can see, there's already some changes happening to the footage. Now what I'm gonna do here is I'll go back to my primaries. Let's go back here. So before I do anything, basically what I'll do here is I'll go my primary now. Here on my primary, right? Using the curves, you can kind of play around with like kind of highlights, do a few pretty cool things to kind of like bring in like your highlights down and stuff like that. So there's a lot you could do. Usually what I do, I'll go here, I'll click on editable splines. So you go over here to these little 3 dots, go all the way down to editable splines, and basically I like using this because it's easier for me to just kind of get like smooth curves basically. So when I'm editing, I'm paying attention to like this area on this side, the waveform, and I'm also looking at the sky, right? I'm looking at the sky because I don't want my sky to be too blown out. So I'm looking at the sky, and then I'm kind of trying to balance like the sky. And usually if you want to get more of like a cinematic edit, you want to make sure that your sky isn't blown out. So I'm paying attention to the sky up here to make sure nothing is blown out. Something like that. Let's see, so everything is blown out if I do that, but if I come down here, stuff is not too blown out. So the scene behind me, and if you look closely here, I'm out of focus. You can see these giant mitts. That's what they call them actually. Apparently they call them mitts because they look like a hand mitt. You can see there, like this one right here is a little bit in focus. So it doesn't make sense for me to expose for me as the subject here. And if I was also making a creative choice when recording this to where it would help out with me color grading, I actually would have worn something darker. Like this is white, so it starts blending into the sky. So another reason why I want to expose down, that way there's a little bit of separation between this jacket, windbreaker jacket that I'm wearing, white. So basically, I can bring that down just a little bit. And maybe, let me bring this down here. That way I start getting a little bit of contrast. Yeah, prime. So right now, I think that looks good. This was shot on a cloudy day. As you can see, there really is no blue in the sky. So it was overcast. So technically, the footage doesn't have to be super bright because the sun wasn't really beaming out there like that. It was overcast. I'm liking the way that looks. We're gonna add another node. So I'll do Alt-S. And we're gonna add another node to where I can start playing around with the colors. Maybe one more thing I'll do here is I'll go to my wheel here and I'll push the contrast just a little bit. If I'm looking at my waveform here, so usually when I'm editing, I try to keep everything under this like point here. I try to stay under 896 right here. So everything looks swell, but we can push the contrast, but the more you push the contrast, the more the sky gets blown out, right? So I'll bring it like right there, just push it a little bit up to the edge. I can still see some detail in the clouds there, so that's good. Footage starting to look like something. Color temperature, I'll put the color temperature on a different node. So this one I'll call it temperature for my color temperature, so I'll just call it temp. And in this node, like I said, layers, if I turn that off, you can see the difference. But here we'll go ahead and kind of play around with the temperature. I like to have my videos as slightly on the warmer side, but you don't want to go too crazy because you start affecting the color of the jacket. So if I go cool, go cool. If I go cooler, basically, try to warm it up. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, so you don't want to go too crazy. I mean, you can make it warm as a creative choice, but then it starts looking a little too obvious, like what you're trying to do. So maybe I'll warm it up to like 160. Let's see the difference. Yeah, creative choice. Yeah, right. Okay, that's pretty good. Okay, I like the way that looks. Slightly warmer. Come down here. Alt. I'll create another node here, and in this node, I'll call this node color. So anything that has to do with color, look, or color grade, I'll do that. But the temperature, I'm happy with the temp. So what I'll do next here is, but I'm thinking maybe I can boost the colors just a little bit. So just boost the color just a little bit right there. See how it looks. There we go. Just to give it a little bit more color. So if I turn this off, you can see the difference. All right, let's do another node. So I think this one I'll call the look, right? So the look is where I'll probably do a little bit of like more creative stuff, play around with the look. So here I'll start playing around. Like I like to go to HDR and kind of play around with the colors. I feel like you get a little bit more better separation in HDR and play around with these colors. So you can go crazy with it. You can see like if I go down here, there's more of a separation between all the cooler colors, all the highlights, and all the warm colors. So it kind of just gives you that option. So if you want to do something where you kind of like, okay, I want to make a little bit more separation between my blues, you can do that here. Or if you want to focus on more of the light areas, you want to make the lighter areas cooler, you want to come here, like all your highlights, you can kind of like make them as cold as you want. It was actually a cold day actually, so it would make sense to have the sky be a little bit more cool, and then you could go into the shadows and you can add like a little bit more warmth to the shadows there. Make it a little bit more yellow. If I want, I can make it like fiery red. Actually, I like that. That actually looks very much as close to what, if I can remember how it looked there, like as far as the dirt, looking almost like reddish to the eye. So actually doing that makes more sense. And if I'm being honest, this looks pretty good to me right there. I can color grade for like hours, but for the sake of this video, I'll just add my little extra secret sauce. And after this node, I'll add another node. Color grading is like baking a cake. You know, you're putting all the ingredients together, but once the cake is baked, you want to put a little sprinkle, a little icing, you know, on the cake, right? So this is kind of like, this last node is where I kind of like bring it all together to where I got my footage looking more like something that's shot on film, right? So I'll call this node blur. And the cool thing about Davinci Resolve here in the effects, if you search up here in the library for your effects, blur is already at the top. So what I'll do is, I like to use circular blur, right? It kind of gives kind of like a cool effect, like an old vintage lens, where it's got like everything towards the edges kind of like loses focus. Because if you look at this footage, even though I shot this, I think with a 50mm lens, if I'm not mistaken, but you can say there's, everything looks, you know, very crisp and sharp, which is good. But like I said, I'm trying to go for that vintage look right here. So it's gonna give like some circular blur, right? So as you can see here, everything on the side, on the corners is blurred out. But I can go here on strength and smooth it out a little bit, all the way to 0. Normally what I do, I bring it up to like about 211. You can make it a little bit more pronounced, but maybe like 248, 238 right there, strength-wise. And then if I play it, like I said, it kind of gives like a nice little effect right here. Yeah, kind of like you shot the footage on an old vintage lens. And this little point here is just like the midpoint to where you kind of move, and wherever you put this point, it's gonna be in focus. But right now, I'll just leave it in the middle for a shot like this because Monument Valley is the main character. So if you look at that right there, that's that right there. So that's the first video, right? That's the first color grade on the first video. We're gonna go into the second video clip. So for this one, I'll go a little bit faster, right? Because you guys saw my breakdown. So for this one, I'll go a little bit faster. I'll have my 3 nodes here. So this is gonna be mine. This is gonna be my primary edits here. This is gonna be my color space transform. And then this is gonna be my LUT. This is where I'm gonna bring my LUT in. All right, and we'll click on that one. We're gonna go to effects. We're gonna go to color, space transform, Cine on film. Like I said, that's my go-to. I love the way Cine on film looks. All right, so since now that we got our color space transform set up, we're gonna go here and we're gonna find a LUT, right? So this LUT, we're gonna use one of the Sony LUTs for this one. Sony LUTs. All right, so sometimes I eyeball it and I'm just looking at the one that's gonna look the most natural, because then that's gonna make the editing process easier. So I picked this one right here. So if I'm looking at it, it looks like the most natural. Skin tones are looking good. It's probably looking close to what this footage looked like to the eye when I was recording this footage right here. So nice little creative shot here. So for my primaries here, let's see. I'm just looking at the sky here. Nothing is blown out. The car I was driving is white. This looks white. I'm liking it so far. So this one, we're not gonna even go too crazy because technically if you wanted, you could just do your primaries and be good. So I go to my primaries, primary color wheels, and then I'll play around with the contrast here. Play around with the contrast. Now, if you do stuff with the contrast, the sky starts getting blown out if you kind of start boosting the contrast, right? So let's go back to 0. So what I'll do, instead of doing that, we'll go to the curves and we'll go to editable splines, make sure that's checked, and I'll play around. I'll try to do an S-curve. So I'll bring this up and then I'll bring this down, baby. And I'm looking at my waveform here, bring this a little bit down. I'm trying to reserve as much detail in my skin, and I'm also trying to reserve as much detail in the sky. So I'm not doing anything too drastic, like nothing too crazy, right? So like right about there is good. Okay, so I'll go a little darker with the shadows for this one because, all right, so I'm liking that. You know, like I said, if you're trying to go for that cinematic look, don't be afraid of like dark shadows and stuff like that. You know, if every movie you watch, the stuff that's in the shadows are damn near black. You know what I mean? If anything. So don't be afraid of having dark shadows and everything like that. Unless you're trying to make a different type of content. But usually if you're trying to go for more of that cinematic look, it's all about shadows and highlights and balancing those two things. So when I'm looking at the shadows, I'm not trying to get these shadows down here. I'm not trying to see what's back over here, like what's down here, right? You know, you can clearly tell like I'm focusing on me as the subject, my face, and me driving, right, in this scene. So what needs to be lit is lit. You can see my eyes. That's kind of like what I'm focusing on here, the money maker. So this is more of like a natural look here. And if you're doing just like vlog content, This actually is good enough. You can leave it here, but you know, we're here to push the boundaries. So I'll create another node here. We'll play around with the color temperature a little bit. Okay, let me move a little faster here. I'm dragging it. So it was a warm day. I mean, I live in Connecticut. Right now, the weather is like freezing. Right now, it's 31 degrees outside. It was kind of warm, so it was probably like 60 degrees, which is pretty warm up here in Connecticut in October when I shot this footage. So I'll warm it up a little bit, right? Now, color temperature, you can use it to tell narratives and stories. If it was super cold, you probably go like more cooler with your colors, you know, like if it was super cold. But it was a warm day, so I'm comfortable with kind of making my video warmer, right? If I want, I can go crazy with the warmth. But I think like right about here is about good. I am happy with how that looks. Temp, and then down here, I'll create another node. Create another node down here. And this one is gonna be my color, right? So just my color boost. I like to kind of bring in a little bit more color, just a little bit of color. You can go crazy with it, like you can go insane with it, right? But we're gonna just kind of like bring in some of that color. Nothing crazy. Like I think that looks pretty good. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Maybe I might dial back the color just a little bit. So you can see if I mute the LUT, the LUT is doing a lot of heavy lifting right here. Yeah, so you can see the before and after with the LUT, without the LUT. So right now I'm liking it. We're gonna play around with a little bit of like, I'll create the last node here. All right, let's go here. And this is gonna be my look, basically where I'll just kind of play around with the colors, you know. We're gonna play with the highlights and the shadows. So for the light, I'm looking at everywhere where the light is hitting. If I want, I can make it green. You know, I can play with the look. We can do like a dystopian Oppenheimer green look. And the key is not to go too crazy with it. You just want to finesse it enough to where you're kind of getting a little shadow look. Or if I want, I can go like super like yellow with it to look like it's like dystopian future or something like that. If I want, I can go there with it. But that looks too much. It looks like I'm driving into a nuclear blast. But I can just a little saddle, maybe like there, a little green tint, green yellow tint right there. That's not bad actually. Actually, I'm not mad at that right there. Then the shadows, we can maybe go cool with the shadows. Let's see. Ooh, it's a little bit of a dance. You gotta try to balance it out. Sometimes I push it on both sides to see what works. Cool it down a little bit. Nothing too crazy, but then I'm gonna go back over here and push it a little bit up, you know. Then before, after. It was looking a little bit more purple, and this kind of brings it here. The only thing I might do here is go back to my primaries. And I think the one thing that's gonna help out is if I'll go back over here and I'll just try to bring things a little bit down here. That way I'm still reserving some detail in some areas, like right there. No, it's not too bright. Go back over here to my contrast. Let me just try to boost the contrast just a little bit. Bring the highlights down just a little bit. And I can even push the shadows down a little bit. Maybe bring the highlights a little bit up. But I think that's it for this one right here. I think that looks pretty good. That looks pretty solid right there to me. And that's pretty good. Like, I don't think I need to do anything else with that footage. I think that's solid to me. Now, for my last piece of footage here, I'll be color grading. It's gonna be, this one I'll color grade without a LUT. This one is probably gonna be a faster color grade, right? Because I don't have to worry about a color space transform on it. So this node, same thing, primaries, you know, highlights, contrast, shadows. We'll throw them in one bucket. Like I said earlier, you can separate them and put them in different, you know, nodes or layers to make it easy out there for people. But for this one, that's what we're gonna do. Let's see here, primaries, and then let's see, I'll create another node. This one is gonna be my color. I'll create another node here. Oh, whoa. I gotta look at my keys when I'm doing this. Color. Now we'll do temp for this one. Temperature. All right. So this one, because we're just working within Actually, with this one, I'll label this, I'll do curves for this one. I'll try to separate some of these curves and then node, do curves. Yeah, so I'll continue building as I go. So for this one, we'll go to curves, boom, editable splines is selected. We'll go up here and I'll go down here and create an S curve. Now for this one, I'm trying to like, basically trying to recreate how the colors and everything looked when I was there, right? So I'm bringing it way down here, like right about there for the curves. So, okay, so that's, as far as the sky, I'm looking at the sky as well back over here. So I'll probably bring this down. It was an overcast day. Okay, so then for this one, I will create another node where I'll go to my color wheel, right? So here in my color wheel, I will start boosting colors here, boom. So you can tell just by boosting the color, the footage is starting to look like something. I'm like, you can see the trees, the green is in the trees and everything. So, you know, and this actually would be good if you're trying to do more of a documentary style where you're not too much focused on getting a specific look. You're just trying to kind of color correct and get more of like a documentary style. This would be quicker and faster. And honestly, if I was just trying to pump out something quick, I could even stop here, but we're gonna also play around with the color temperature with this one. And notice in this footage, I drove through like a tunnel, right? And notice in the tunnel, I'm not trying to like, make sure that you can see some details in the tunnel. Like there's necessarily not a lot of information within the tunnel you'd wanna show unless you're trying to kind of show specific details in the tunnel. So I'm totally okay with having the tunnel blacked out to where you're not seeing too much on the tunnel, except these, if you look at the footage here, there are these little reflectors that are reflecting, you know, light, bouncing light back to, you know, the camera to where you can see them. And I'm also still paying attention to the sky. Even though the sky is kind of blown out up here, you can still see some cloud details. You want to make sure like when you're shooting your footage, you're making sure that you're exposing correctly, right? That way in post, you don't have to try to fight with the footage to try to get it to where it's exposed. So, but for me personally, I'm okay with the sky being blown out, right? Because there really isn't really nothing in the sky. So the color temperature here, let's see. I'll probably warm it up just a little bit, like right there. And if you come out on the other side here, you'll see how that looks. There you go. That's pretty much it. Like I'm looking at this, unless you want to do stuff that's a little bit more like creative as far as with playing with the colors. Like for me, I'm happy with this. I'm happy with the way this looks right here. Yeah, so basically that's pretty much how I color grade my videos in Davinci Resolve. Definitely like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more videos like this and other videos that I'll be putting out there. Stay blessed, be good out there. Have a nice day. I'll catch you in the next video. Thanks.